Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some very intriguing news coming out of the Nebraska Football Program as they're hiring former general manager from TCU, Anthony Crispino. And I want to talk about largely two things. One, what does a general manager do at a Power 5 college football program? And more importantly, why is Anthony Crispino a very intriguing hire for the Nebraska Cornhuskers? This is a piece of news that I think largely going to fly under the radar for a lot of college football fans and even Nebraska fans. But I think this has a massive impact on this program moving forward. Want to get into one, what the general manager does at the college football level. And then two, after doing some reading on Anthony Crispino, talk about what he brings to this Nebraska program. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. And as always, a shout out to the Nebraska fans. If there's news happening with Nebraska football, we're going to be talking about a program I love talking about. You guys continue to show a ton of support to the boys. All the Go Big Reds in the comment section. That stuff means the world to us. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Anthony Crispino. But more importantly, talk about the role of a general manager at the college football level. And for those who are not new to this channel, you guys know I'm very interested in kind of talent acquisition, roster management at the college football level. And it's no secret, it has been the Wild West in college football on the recruiting trail, both the high school and transfer portal over the last couple of years. And the general manager position at the college football level largely didn't exist 10 years ago. But obviously with the transfer portal being as significant and as wild as it is, and obviously high school recruiting becoming more and more important, like you're starting to see teams and programs hire general managers. Now, what the general manager does for a football program is kind of a multitude of things, but I would essentially say it's kind of the head of this program in terms of managing the roster, and that is talent acquisition on the high school trail and in the transfer portal, and looking at the roster and saying, all right, we need more scholarship bodies at this particular position. You're organizing recruiting boards and kind of stacking talent and stacking targets for this Nebraska coaching staff to go out on the recruiting trail and go recruit. And in a world where college football, in the high school recruiting and transfer portal, there is so much talent, one, all over the country, whether it's at the high school ranks or in the transfer portal. Having a guy that is kind of overseeing what's going on within the program in terms of evaluating targets, whether in the portal or the high school ranks, is massively important. I think it's even more important to this day, even in the high school trail, because there is so much talent all over the country. And you've seen Nebraska, go out west and grab some commits. You saw them go out to Southwest Florida and go grab a lot of talent there as well. Recruiting's going national. And so to have a guy that helps stack all this talent and kind of identify some targets for Nebraska to go after on the recruiting trail is massive. And obviously you have your scouting department and your player personnel department that goes and looks at the film, goes and watch players and kind of stacks that talent. But having a guy largely overseeing the roster construction of this program has been massive. And you're seeing a lot of Power 5 programs give a lot of credit to general managers in terms of acquiring talent and identifying talent. And kind of being the recruiting nerd that I am, I've had the privilege to listen to a lot of different general managers at the Power 5 programs on podcasts and talk about what they do. And you kind of realize they have a massive influence on this program. And I listened to the Ohio State one a couple of weeks ago, kind of identifying and talking about how they go about identifying targets, what they look for in specific athletes. And you kind of work hand in hand with the personnel department in terms of identifying the guys that you think make this program better year to year at the college football level. Now, specifically, Anthony Crispino, and why I'm so intrigued with him is I want to go back to kind of where he made a name for himself, and that is with Sonny Dykes at SMU and then his move to TCU. And first, going back to his time at SMU, where, again, Sonny Dykes in this TCU or SMU team at that point had a ton of success, largely in the transfer portal. Now, this was a team that did well at the high school ranks, acquiring kind of some hidden gems in the state of Texas. But you look at SMU and why they had so much success, why Sonny Dykes was able to get hired by TCU, was they largely dominated the transfer portal. Looking at talent that's coming from the Power 5 conference and saying, and kind of identifying those guys that maybe didn't make it at the Power 5 level, but can take a step down to that Group of 5 level and really provide production. Guys like Tanner Mordecai, Grant Colletter, Tanner Mordecai obviously having a phenomenal 2 seasons at SMU, one of which was under Sonny Dykes. And then a guy like Grant goes and gets drafted into the NFL. Is having a phenomenal year, I believe, for the Philadelphia Eagles. So one of the things that intrigues me the most about Anthony Crispino is what he's done in the transfer portal, both at SMU, but then you go to his time at TCU, and I'm sure many of us remember the magical season TCU had year one under Sonny Dykes. That magic, yeah, Sonny Dykes is a phenomenal head coach, not taking anything away from Sonny Dykes and what he did with that program, but a large portion of that magic came from how did you go from taking over this TCU job and within 1 year turning this into a national championship contender, making the college football playoffs, making the national championship game, was they did a ton of work in the transfer portal and they hit on a ton of targets. And you start scrolling down this list of the transfer portal additions that they made that first year Sonny Dykes took over. Josh Newton, going to be drafted in the NFL in a couple of weeks. Amani Bailey ran for over 1,200 yards for TCU in 2023. You continue to scroll down the list, and guys like Johnny Hodges, who led TCU in tackles in 2022, Mark Perry in the NFL, Jared Wiley going to the NFL in a couple of years, Alan Ali in the NFL. You start scrolling down the list and you see they had so much success identifying that talent in the transfer portal, bringing them to TCU and winning a lot of football games immediately year one. Now, how does this impact Nebraska? Now, I will say this is not a Nebraska program. We've been very vocal. Nebraska is going to look to get their team better in the transfer portal. It's not going to be a program that builds its roster in the transfer portal. It's a developmental program that largely wants to get guys out of the high school ranks, build them up, and then year 3, year 4, year 5, you're winning a lot of football games with those guys that came in from high school. But that being said, it would be, and you're seeing guys like Dabo Swinney have a lot of problems because they refuse to use the transfer portal. And partially why I've been so happy and so excited about Matt Rhule and what he's done in the portal is they're not bringing in 15, 20 guys, but the guys that they're bringing in are guys that are going to significantly impact this roster heading into the 2024 season, right? Guys like Isaiah Nayor and guys like Jamal Banks or Micah Mazuka or Stephon Thompson. Those guys are all that you look at this Nebraska roster and say, yeah, they're going to fit in and help this team win games in 2024. That's probably what I'm most excited about. Not only is this going to help the high school trail and identifying talent and kind of organizing the recruiting efforts and the talent acquisition efforts, but I think you're going to see Nebraska continue to use the transfer portal in a very calculated way, but more importantly, an effective way. Because Anthony Crispino has done a phenomenal job, and I think that's largely why Matt Rhule went out and hired a guy like Anthony Crispino. He wants to make sure this program is well adapted to operate in this transfer portal heavy world. And again, that does not mean Nebraska is going to go out and grab all their talent from the portal, but being able to add 5, 6, 7, 8 guys from the portal that are going to enhance this roster is certainly something that Matt Rhule is interested in doing. And Anthony Crispino has shown a very, very large propensity to be successful in doing so. Again, this news, I'm probably going to largely fly under the radar, but for a recruiting nerd like me, I'm very intrigued to see what this leads to Nebraska, not only acquiring talent from the high school ranks, but also from the transfer portal as well. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Wanted to touch on this, talk a little bit about the responsibility of the general manager and what this team or what this has in terms of impact on this Nebraska program. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support as usual. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.